Hi there, how are you today? I'm going to give another video today, and we're going to talk about a subject that I think will be helpful for many. Thank you for the feedback that I've gotten from several of you regarding the first video presented here. I know that many of us want our lives to improve. That's something we all want. And today I want to share how we can make that happen. So many times we have this sense of what's the use, and it could be easy to have a sense of defeatism and, woe is me, and it's easy to play the poor me victim role where we think life isn't going to get better. We feel that why do we have all these problems that we have? The idea of what's the use? Why should we even try to make our life any better? And Henry Ford has a quote where he said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. So, we think it's not going to happen and we give up. Or we think, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot. And we find out that we're successful. Henry Ford's quote echoes what was said nearly 3,000 years ago. In Proverbs 23, verse 7, it says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So attitude is very critical, and we want to take a look at what we can do so that we can move forward when we find ourselves stuck with self-defeating attitudes and false beliefs. So today's subject is about what I call the 3 A's. And the first A is awareness. And we have to see our issue that we're wrestling with. We need to be able to see it. We can't change anything unless we see it first. So that's awareness. And that's 80% of the solution. Now, a key point regarding awareness is that we don't get this perspective by going about it alone. Personal growth is not a correspondence program or an online class where we read some books, take some notes, and we fix ourselves. For us to get awareness, a key point for that is that we need to get wise counsel. And that means we need to be with people who know us. And these are people who are what I called earlier in my previous video as safe people. These are people who have our best interest in mind. So we don't want to get counsel from people who put us down, but from those who have known us for quite a long time and have our best interest in mind. There's a reason why we need them and others to get awareness, because they are emotionally detached. They are not enmeshed with whatever the concern is that we're trying to deal with in our lives. So they can have some distance and perspective, which helps us. This is why so many people have been finding recovery to be very helpful, the recovery movement. And one big reason for that is through recovery you can get a sponsor. And that's someone who non-judgmentally works with you as you deal with the areas where you want to grow in your life. And recovery, the individual there who's your sponsor is not there to criticize you, judge you, to devalue you. They're there to help you so that you can find healthier and better alternatives to replace the defeating behaviors and thoughts that easily can defeat us and not allow us to have the life that we want to enjoy. So awareness is important, and that's 80% of the solution. We can't change anything until we see it first. But the second step towards personal growth is acceptance. And this is a vital part for our healing. We often can go from awareness to action. And it sounds like a good idea. It's how our Western civilization often operates. It sounds like how engineers deal with things. Let's define the problem. Okay, here's the steps we need to take. Sounds pretty good, but it isn't. It's a bad idea. When we're facing a personal problem, I call it a characterological problem. If we're dealing with false beliefs or patterns that defeat us, behavior patterns, we need to be able to go beyond just trying to trim the bush of our problem. If you trim a bush of weeds, um, you keep on trimming it, it's going to grow back. But where there's a fruit, in these weeds that we're looking at, there's a root. And with acceptance, we're dealing with the root issue. So one of the questions when we're dealing with acceptance is if we're dealing with an issue, we isolate ourselves, we find ourselves depressed, we find ourselves the victim of predators, whatever struggle that we're wrestling with and my clients wrestle with, we have to look at what's the payoff. Now I know that sounds really strange, the payoff for us doing behavior that only devalues us or gets us discouraged or depressed. But we don't allow anything to happen unless there is a payoff. I don't want to go into too much detail regarding this right now in this video, but we don't do something unless there's some reward. There was one client where she isolated from everyone. Her own children didn't relate with her. Her husband didn't relate with her. And I asked her what was her payoff, and she couldn't imagine what was the payoff for her having this type of life where no one connected with her. And I had her think about it for a week, and then the next week I met with her for a session, and she still couldn't think about it. And so I suggested to her, I said, do you think it possibly might be that the payoff is that it fulfills the script that you have? You were told that you're unlovable, that no one would care for you. So she said, yes, that's exactly it. It's fulfilling the script that I have about myself. So payoffs can be a perverse reward that is validating a false belief or self-defeating behavior that keeps us stuck where we are. So we need to look at what is the root issue, and that's acceptance. So that's dealing with the heart level. What's my payoff? Why do I allow these things? What's my reward for allowing this defeating behavior? And in acceptance and recovery, and what I'm going to say here sounds strange, but acceptance doesn't mean acceptance. And you say, what do you mean? Well, acceptance doesn't mean resignation. Oh, I just have to accept my circumstances. I have to accept that I have a philandering husband. I have an alcoholic parent. I have a critical boyfriend or a wife. Oh, I just need to accept it. That's what acceptance means. No, it doesn't. In recovery, we get a clearer definition of acceptance. Acceptance is not synonymous with resignation, with a giving up spirit, with passivity, with a fatalism, as I mentioned earlier. Acceptance is several things, and there's 5 steps. We see the issue. That's awareness. We talked about that. And then we feel it. So we go beyond just using our head. And then we grieve it. We grieve what's troubling us. And then we let go of it. We realize we have to let go. We're powerless over whatever it is that's disturbing us. That it is way beyond our capacities to just handle alone. We let go of the grieving. And then the next step is we look at what are our options. I had one woman who had an alcoholic husband, and her acceptance was one day when he came home, she said, I'm going to move in with my folks and take the kids with me. I'm going to stay at the motel the next couple of days, and I'm moving over to my parents. And you need to deal with your drinking. And when you get that in line, then we can talk about our relationship. So she saw the issue, she felt it, she grieved it, She let go of her powerlessness regarding her husband's behavior, but then she looked at what her options were. So acceptance empowers us, it gives us options. We look at what we can do, and that's why we need others in our circle, in our supportive network, because they can detach. They're not as emotionally enmeshed, and they can maybe suggest some things that we might want to consider that when we're wrapped up in it, we might not even think about. So we look at our options and it empowers us. This is acceptance. This is when we see a fruit of a problem, there's a root. And with acceptance, we're pulling out that root. We're looking at the root that's dealing with it. If we just try to remedy it with simplistic answers, the problem's not going to go away. We have to look at our part, how we are emotionally invested, how it has its grips on us psychologically, whatever struggle we're dealing with. So 80% of the solution is awareness, and 18% of it is acceptance. So then the last step is taking action. And this is where I describe it as shoe leather. You might think that sounds strange, but when we get recovery, we take hold of recovery principles, it's like shoe leather that we can wrap around our feet and help us to go out in the world and walk on the glass of predators and on false beliefs that plead for us to not take action and to remain as we are. So if you did math, the action is 2% of the solution. And you might ask why. And the reason is that when we get the awareness and see the problem, and when we come to the acceptance and see our payoff for why we remain stuck as we have been, and why we're allowing defeating behavior to continue in our lives, action automatically follows. So my summary for today is that the awareness is the head, acceptance is the heart, and action is the feet, where when we use the 3 steps, we'll find ourselves marching in step with our values, we'll be more consistent with them, and we will find ourselves having a greater attitude of gratitude. We're moving beyond staying stuck. So anyway, I hope that this has been helpful for you. Please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. And I'm wishing you a terrific and a great day tomorrow. And I will visit with you another time. You take care.